Heyo! Shout out to Jupiter Ascending.
Shout out Jupiter Ascending. Sequel one.
That's what we're all saying. Maybe this is the sequel or prequel, if you think about it.
Maybe Bingley is dimension traveling, right? Maybe he's Titus, and this was his way of bringing about a harvest-ready situation for the Earth during this time.
Yeah, if you watch to the post-credits sequence, there's just a scene where he opens up like a carriage and it's full of bees, and he's like, all hail. Welcome to Mortified, the Friendship Quest, a podcast where two long-distance friends bounce media recommendations, all in hopes the other will like it. I'm Aaron.
And I'm the Antichrist.
And this week, we exhume Jane Austen's legacy with Pride and Prejudice and zombies. Before we grapple with the perils of adaptation, remember you can help us on Mortified the Legitimacy Quest by subscribing to us on YouTube, iTunes, or Spotify, signing up for our monthly newsletter through the link in our show notes, or following us on Twitter and Tumblr at MortifiedPod. Leyla.
Aaron.
You ever read much Jane Austen?
So I've actually never read Jane Austen. I have seen several film adaptations of her works.
Great. That is kind of where I'm coming from, too. I watched the '05 Pride and Prejudice a long time ago. But I am, unfortunately unfamiliar with a lot of Austen's work, except for, what I read on Tumblr and social media. But I get the impression that her work still holds up even a couple hundred years later. And like, there's a reason that she, as an author, as a writer, has kind of persisted throughout, Western canon. And generally speaking, is regarded as like a pretty good writer and tells stories that are compelling and interesting and kind of deal with the struggles that we as humans have, based on the ways in which we construct our lives, the social norms that we are still somehow, trying to navigate. Maybe they're not quite as rigid as they used to be. And, I don't know if this is Victorian era, but, like 19th century England, right? But we are still kind of dealing with the same, like, oh, somebody fucked up at a party. Oh, somebody is trying to, get a date. So like Jane Austen's universal appeal is really fucking being put to the test here with this adaptation of the 2009 Pride and Prejudice book and Zombies book, which was turned into a movie in 2016. And that's what we're going to talk about.
Yeah, so here's the thing. Marty just read a bunch of Jane Austen's books, and I trust most everything that Marty says. And they said it's pretty good. In fact, they were quite enamored with several of the books a couple months ago. So I'm going to say that it does hold up. I've seen adaptations. I've seen a couple of different Pride and Prejudices. I've seen Emma. And listen, I'm a feminist. I'm a modern woman, but there's nothing like watching a good old Jane Austen movie and being completely scandalized by like social missteps, being like, they touched hands. Like, the stakes are so low and yet so high. A good Jane Austen adaptation will really take you along for the ride. And like a fun, scandalous way. But yeah, do you wanna give us the summary?
Yeah. So basically.
Oh, wait, is it my turn? Is that what you have?
It is your turn.
Oh, shit. Okay. Whoops. I want to give us the summary.
Okay.
So in the 19th century, the English got a zombie plague because they decided to do colonialism. The funniest part of that intro, explaining how the zombies got to England, was definitely the fact that they were like, everybody thought it was the French for a while. Love an opportunity to shit on the French. Otherwise, it's kind of the typical Pride and Prejudice plot. So like Elizabeth Bennet and her sisters have to find husbands because they are all daughters in this family, meaning their father's estate cannot go to them because, 19th century England. The plot of Pride and Prejudice is that Mr. Bingley shows up to marry the sister of Elizabeth, who's our main character, and so does Mr. Darcy, and Mr. Darcy is a little bitch. And the conflict with Elizabeth starts when she overhears Mr. Darcy basically calling her ugly. And she's like, wow, what a little bitch. and Austen-esque social graces and mishaps and whatnot happen until basically Elizabeth roasts Darcy so hard, so repeatedly, that he falls head over heels for her. And he proposes to her once. She says, no, fuck you. You told Mr. Bingley that my sister is a gold digger. So, no, she actually really loved him, and you're an asshole. And he's like, oh, fuck. Oh, shit. Oh, my God. And he goes and he repairs the thing with Mr. Bingley. And then he writes Lizzie this letter where he's like, actually, I want you to know, like, I'm so emo and misunderstood. And, like, you put the stars in the sky, and, like, I love you so much, but, like, listen, I get it. You said you hate me, so, like, one more word out of you and I won't hate you, and, like, I'll leave it alone. I won't ask you to marry me again. And Lizzie Bennet falls in love with a statue or whatever in the 2005 movie, and then they have this, like, beautiful romantic union after she's like, wow, you are an asshole, but it's more awkward than asshole. And you really love me. And finally, I'm right and everyone else in the society is wrong. You can marry for love and money. So that's Pride and Prejudice. Now imagine that movie, but there's zombies. And everyone is kind of an emo 2016 teenager, sort of. Like, teenager as in movie teenager, as in adults playing teenagers. And so there's a zombie thing, and London is, like, isolated. Darcy is a colonel, I think, or, like, a major. He's whatever.
He's a colonel, yes.
He's a colonel. He's in the fight against the fucking zombies. He carries these flies in a little vial in his big emo trench coat because they can detect, like, where the fuck dead
They're
bodies.
corpse flies, right? So
they can detect dead flesh. Hilarious. And so also in this world, you either get sent to China or Japan for martial arts training. Mm-hmm. This is a thread that gets dropped after Act 1. By the way, it's only relevant in the first 30 minutes of the movie, but it's like, oh, although the people who wanted to save some money, like the poor people, go to China because it's cheaper. Japan's the more expensive one. And literally the entire purpose of this is so that Lizzie can walk into a room with Darcy's bitchy friends and they speak Japanese, and she's like, I don't speak Japanese. And that's supposed to mean she's poor. It's really stupid and racist in a 2016 way. Anyway, this guy named Wickham, who Lizzie has a crush on, turns out to be the Antichrist leading all the zombies to take over London, because Darcy denied him gambling money. Does that sum up this flick for you? There's no way to make it make sense.
Yeah, no, there's like a subplot about how the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse are going to return, and there's like a cult of Saint Lazarus where the people who are only half zombie, like if they eat regular brains and not human brains, they don't go full feral. That doesn't matter at all. It could not impact the plot any less, but it's just it is such a wild and tonally, lopsided movie in so many ways. It doesn't really land in one place, but I think that kind of makes it charming in a way.
I mean, yeah, I think you and I both kind of fell into the same place where the first act is just kind of fucking tedious. It's tedious. It's like tonally incoherent. You're like, what am I watching? Darcy says some sexist bullshit, and not like, what does he say? He says, oh, and her figure is light and pleasant, and her arms muscular, but not in a way that makes her unfeminine. Truly? Who wrote that? I want to have a conversation.
So that's one of the things I want to ask is like how much of the weird stuff is actually just Jane Austen and how much of it is this adaptation?
It is mostly this adaptation. Jane Austen doesn't really write that much weirdness. Mm-hmm. Like, obviously, like, Jane Austen's writings are dated, but she's a woman writing. Like, she's not. It's crazy. Anyway, again, I haven't read the book, so maybe there is some weird shit in there, but, like, I don't know. I haven't noticed it in any of the other adaptations I've watched, so who's to say? But it's like, first act is a complete kind of racist, misogynistic horseshit, and it does a terrible job of setting up the rest of the movie. But the rest of the movie is so absurd that you're kind of like, oh, okay, we're here now.
Doctor Who's in it, like, it's just wild.
Matt, did you watch Morbius?
No, of course not. Nobody's watched Morbius.
Okay, I did. So here's the thing.
You're insane.
I watched it on an airplane on an overnight flight while I was having an active panic attack.
Sure, okay.
Don't recommend. So, here's the thing. Matt Smith is also in that movie, and a lot of the reviews I've seen of it is just making fun of this scene where he, like, dances around because he's got his, like, hot new Morbin-time body. But the thing is that Matt Smith in that movie knows what movie he's in, and he's the only one having fun. And I would like to say that it's the same shit in this movie. I kind of lost Matt Smith. Doctor Who Matt Smith, really, like, I got kind of sick of him. But he's winning me back. He's having fun.
Yeah, no, you gotta give it up for an actor who's just like, I don't have to be a serious weirdo. I'm just gonna be a regular weirdo.
Yeah, I could just be a weirdo.
Yeah, no, he's great. And, like, I think his portrayal of Mr. Collins, I believe, in this film is doing something that is just, like, kind of endearing and gets at the best parts of, like, the Doctor. Like, I struggle with Matt Smith's Doctor because, like, I feel like he is,
because it goes
like,
on forever and doesn't.
Well, yes,
end
he
ever.
does kind of go on forever. Unfortunately, he gets like 8 different companions and just doesn't die. But like, also, you know, he is, the Doctor is like trying to be like very serious, and sometimes because he's supposed to be this world protector, but he's also very silly because the Doctor's a silly character. And that kind of clash, I don't, makes him a little bit unlikable for me. But at the same time, like, when you get to the just like, I'm just gonna be a silly weirdo, like in Morbius, like in this, you know, I think it's a really good use of his skills, and you got to give it up for somebody who was just like, sure, fuck it, I'll be in this movie.
There is a moment. I took a screenshot of it, and I put it in my notes. There's a moment where, like, there's like this carriage ambush, and like all the Bennett girls have these like rifles, and they're really serious, and they're gonna like shoot the zombie. And they shoot the zombie, and Matt Smith is just standing behind them in the background, and he just does like and he puts his hand over his mouth very daintily, and it's the funniest moment in the whole movie.
He knows what he's doing. It's good.
He's having a great fucking time. You know who else I think is having a pretty good time? Lily Allen as is that her last name?
I think it's Lily Collins.
Collins,
let me
you're
check.
right. She played Cinderella in the 2017 adaptation.
Yes, it was Lily Collins.
And she also played
Lily James. Shit, sorry.
Jesus,
we are out of our minds here.
Out of it. Lily James, who played Cinderella in the 2017 live action, and also young Meryl Streep in Mamma Mia 2.
Yes.
I thought she knew what movie she was in. She was also having a great time.
Yes, I feel like she got the right mix of, like, you know, being a weird, you know, like, English woman, but also is like, and I know Kung Fu. So, like, you know, it's a fun time. I think she's doing pretty well given the material she has to work with. You know, like, I think Lizzie Bennet in the books, you know, is a pretty well understood character as, like, somebody who's, like, you know, like, wants to marry for love and is, like, kind of like, I'm not going to take shit from anyone, but also, you know, is a person, is, you know, can have her feelings hurt, and, you know, is generally, like, kind of a protagonist that there's she's kind of a type and has endured for hundreds of years because it's kind of a person that we all hoped that we are, you know, somebody who can stand up for themselves, who is strong and willful, but also, you know, like, has feelings and isn't just like, you know, a weird robot. In this adaptation, I really think that, like, we do get the same kind of character, but, like, it's all the other, like, yeah, I would rather die, you know, if I'm gonna get married, you know, my husband will never make me relinquish my blade, and, like, I would rather die before I give up my Shaolin training, and it's like, all right, Liz, weird stance to take.
Well, that's the thing. Okay, so the book that this movie was based off of, as well as the director of this flick, are both men. And what they fundamentally misunderstand about Elizabeth Bennet is that she's a very relatable girl to people like me, where it's like, you're a feminist, but you just want, like, you're a romantic about it. And it's a hard existence, and I think that's why Pride and Prejudice hits so hard.
You wouldn't mind being married to a millionaire, is the thing.
He doesn't even have to be a millionaire. That's the thing about Lizzie Bennet. She would settle. But, like, you know, that's the fantasy is like, oh, he's rich and he respects my autonomy as a human being.
Yes, yes.
So, yeah, they fundamentally misunderstand that. So she reads as very just, like, weird. She reads really inconsistent.
Also, this is like, I think, you know, this movie got caught in development hell, so I do think we are getting a little bit of that Hunger Games ass, like...
You can tell.
Yeah, like, you can... I mean, one, yes, you can tell because this movie's all over the place, but, like, I do feel like we're getting, like, the tail end of the strong female protagonist, you know, that has weapons, kind of character archetype of the early 2010s, so, you know... I don't think it's the best portrayal of Elizabeth Bennet by any means, but I think she's fine, and you know, Lily James is doing a good job, and you know what, she cashed that check. Do you know who they were gonna tap for Lily or for Elizabeth before?
Our queen Amidala herself, Natalie Portman.
Fucking Natalie Portman, which is hysterical. I love that Natalie Portman. She would have done a great job. No, she would have crushed it. And I got a lot of Natalie Portman vibes. Like, I feel like she was, you know, doing the same kind of like serious and regal hot girl shit, but also, you know, in a very silly movie. You know who else was supposed to be in this film?
Oh God, no.
Jennifer Aniston.
Stop.
And
who?
Mr. Bean himself, Rowan Atkinson.
Who was Rowan Atkinson supposed to be?
I don't know. I assume he would have been one of the weird, like, I assume he would have been Mr. Collins, right?
Oh, I guess. I could see a Rowan Atkinson, Mr. Collins. Was Jennifer Aniston supposed to be Lady Catherine?
It's gotta be, right? Who else would she play? Or the mom.
Or the mom, yeah. But no, Aniston, you're putting her in an eye patch, you're making her look sexy.
Yeah, no, she would... We'll get to Lady Catherine, because I don't have much to say about her except for the one scene, which is very funny.
Yeah, so we got to talk about Darcy. How did you feel about our betrench-coated love interest?
Yeah, I mean, again, I thought he was, like, a little bit on the edgy side, like, you know, where Bennett is the late or early 2010s female protagonist. Darcy was very much like the late 2000s male protagonist, very much in the, or not even late 2000s, but, you know, 2000s generally, like our Van Helsing's, our anti-hero, right? He's very much of that type. Again, this book was written in 2009, so you can kind of tell where that kind of type is coming from, right? And we'll talk a little bit about the zombie boom of the late 2000s, but, you know, I feel like Darcy is trying to get at that feeling. It really would have helped if I had been more familiar with the source material. But I do think that he does a completely fine job at being like a completely uncomfortable asshole, and just not, you know, just like offending everybody he meets and being kind of a dick.
Yeah, he is... he sold me more in this... He is how do I want to put this? He is a teenager's Darcy. He's a very unrefined Darcy. He's a little bitch in all the wrong ways. Darcy is confident in his bitchiness. He's supposed to be very, yes, I am here. I am serving cunt. I'm, you know, like fuck all of you. And, you know, Lizzie Bennett's the only one who's like bold enough to be like, wow, you're a little bitch. And he's like, oh my God, you're right. I am a little bitch. Will you marry me? She says no. Darcy in this flick, in this adaptation, in the first half, he's not confident enough in being a little bitch for it to like work on me. In the second half, though, I do like that he looks like a kick puppy every time Elizabeth's around. That's the point. There's also a very good, very funny scene where he's like supposed to be fighting off this like graveyard full of zombies, and Lizzie shows up and she's just like chucks an axe into the back of a zombie's head, and I'm like, yeah, this is it. He looks absolutely stricken when she does that. I'm like, yeah, this is the point. This is the flick. Good job.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Do we have much to say about Jane and Bingley?
We have one very specific thing to say about Bingley, which is he is Titus from Jupiter Ascending.
Heyo! Shout out to Jupiter Ascending.
Sequel 1. Sequel.
That's what we're all saying. Maybe this is the sequel or prequel, if you think about it.
Maybe Bingley is dimension traveling, right? Maybe he's Titus, and this was his way of bringing about a harvest-ready situation for the Earth during this time.
Yeah, if you watch to the post-credits sequence, there's just a scene where he opens up like a carriage and it's full of bees, and he's like, all hail, and it's great. But yeah, I think they are cute together. I think they do a good job of being like the couple that's like really in love. There's a wild sequence where Jane gets attacked by a zombie orphanage type deal, like in the end of Act 1, and like it's suggested that like it might mean something more, but it really isn't. And like ostensibly, if you're taking the premise at its face, like she'd be dead as fuck, but she just like recovers and it's fine, which is a little silly, but like I'm sure it is a stand-in for like something that happens in the actual book where like she falls ill or something, but like it's a really weird sequence that I didn't understand at all.
Oh yeah, I can't remember. I barely remember the Jane subplot. Mr. Wickham, he sure shows up.
I mean,
he's sure the Antichrist.
He is the Antichrist, the spawn of Satan, Mr. 666 himself. I don't know what to say. I assume that the plot with him and Darcy's like adopted father is true for the Austen material, like that they had some sort of.
It's something like that. It's close. I can't remember the specifics, but it is very like, ooh, it seems like Darcy expelled him for no reason because Darcy's mean. But it's like, no, he actually slighted Darcy. Something
something like that. In this one, Wickham turned their shared dad into a zombie, and stole his money, which is very silly and fun.
I did like that because that's a very emo thing to have to do, is kill your zombie dad.
Yeah, I'm always doing this, always saying this. There's a lot of catharsis in that. I mean, there is like some weird bits that I don't know if it was actually in the novel, but like he absconds with one of the Bennets, the daughters.
He absconds with the like teenage Bennett daughter, and he also at one point tried to abscond with Georgiana, the 15. I think that's her name, the 15-year-old sister of Mr. Darcy. That was not necessary to keep in this. I don't know. I really can't remember what happens in actual Pride and Prejudice. With that regard, but I can't remember him absconding with teenagers.
So in the original one, I know that he does end up marrying one of the Bennett daughters. I think the one that he elopes with in this one. But then Darcy basically pays him off to make sure that they actually get married. And in this one, Wickham imprisons her in a zombie cage, and Darcy has to rescue her physically. Right. And then he has a katana duel with Wickham after they escape.
Yeah. Oh, well, now we know he went to Japan because he has money.
Yeah, it's great. It's stupid. How did you feel about Lady Catherine?
I was distracted by where I knew her from because I didn't recognize Cersei Lannister with dark hair.
The only thing I have to say about her is that the big reason that she's in Pride and Prejudice is like the big scene she has with Elizabeth is where she's like, hey, I heard that Darcy asked you to marry him. Did you say yes? And she says no. And she's like, okay, because Darcy's promised to my niece or whatever. And she's like, will you never accept, make me a promise that you'll never accept another proposal from him? And Lizzie's like, no. And like, that's a big fight in Pride and Prejudice. In this film, Lady Catherine challenges her to a duel, but then Lizzie's like, well, I can't do that. I would be, drawing my sword against England. And she's like, yeah, that's true. How about you fight my bodyguard, who does beat the shit out of Elizabeth for a while until she drops a load of bricks on him and kills him.
Yeah. Well, see, that's the thing is, like, we'll talk about this more later, but it's so interesting that became, like, a physical confrontation when the whole tension of the Lady Catherine thing is, like, the social pressure of the fact that she has so much more power than Lizzie, and the fact that what's his face, Matt Smith, Parson William Collins, is like tied into this whole thing as the guy who would potentially be taking over the Bennett like house. Speaking of whom, Matt Smith, as we said, having a great time.
Yeah. I mean, we touched on this kind of already, but like he is just being like kind of a weird, creepy, not creepy even, but just like overbearing and like, you know, he thinks he's such hot shit, but like everybody's laughing at him. Like he's about to like read some like you know sermons to them, and they're all just like, we don't want to listen to this shit. Can we go do literally anything else? But like he plays into that, and he's just like, oh no. There's a bit where Lizzie, after they like you know got away from the carriage ambush, Lizzie is struggling with all the rifles. And he goes, oh, let me help you. And then he like repositions them so that way she can carry them easier. And he's like, gallantry's not dead. And then he leaves her again, which is like, yes, that's exactly the kind of character that you want him to be playing.
There's also at the very, very end during the double wedding, which I fucking hated. I thought that was so annoying.
Very stupid.
So dumb. He, instead of you may not kiss the bride, he says, you may now kiss Darcy. I mean, the bride. I really like that little, I'm like, listen, it's probably mean-spirited because it's, you know, a movie made in 2016, but I like that little, fucking bisexual William Collins moment that we got at the end there. I thought that was silly.
It's fun. We're going to reinterpret it as fun and not, you know, gay panic.
Yeah, Jesus.
But yeah, like in general, you know, do you feel like this film was trying to evoke the 2005, which I do believe was Keira Knightley, right?
My queen, Keira Knightley, yes.
Yeah.
Fucking period piece, you know, monopolist.
It is the, you know, that's the thing, the only exposure I've had to Jane Austen, you know, and everybody kind of regards it as great. But, like, I do feel like there are some bits where they are trying to make allusions to that don't, like, basically ever land. But it is a strange thing. Like, specifically, I'm thinking of when Darcy dives into a pool, a lake, and he comes out and he's all wet. And I feel like that is a thing that happened in the '05 movie. But what are your thoughts? You probably have better thoughts about this.
Yeah, so we can get into a fun conversation here about imitation versus homage, because this definitely tries to imitate the beats of that movie without understanding why they worked. So like if you're gonna like the iconic thing, okay, so there's another movie out right now everybody should watch. It's called Fire Island. It's on Hulu. It is modern Pride and Prejudice, but gay. It takes place on Fire Island. It's written by Joel Kim Booster. It's got, you know, a bunch of comedians in it. Margaret Cho's in it. It's a great film. One of the best Pride and Prejudice adaptations. Just out there. Wild. So what they fundamentally understand about 2005 Pride and Prejudice is like the thing you can reference is the confession in the rain, or like that the altercation Lizzie and Bennett have in the rain. Like they do that. But in Fire Island, they understand why that scene works, and it's the tension of the thing that's happening. And so they're not directly trying to imitate the pagoda and the rain and all this other stuff. They're like, okay, it's raining, but these two dudes are coming from like a sex party, so they are only wearing like underwear and you know, are standing in the rain having a fight. So if they were, that's like the easiest one to pay homage to, but instead they decided to just like make Darcy damp. It's like, but you don't understand why the dampness works. It doesn't work on this like Darcy that doesn't have the correct, I refer to it as a wet energy. There's just men who have a wet, like they always emotionally feel like they just came out of the rain. And this Darcy doesn't feel wet enough for that to work. That's so I do think they were trying to evoke it, but they didn't take time to understand why those scenes worked in the 2005 Pride and Prejudice. So it just came out as like a cheap copy, and therefore it didn't work, and added to this like really non-committal vibe of the whole flick.
And like to build on that, the actual like confrontation they do have between Bennett and Darcy is a sword fight. Like,
Which
if
was
that,
funny.
listen, it was a funny sword fight, but like, that kind of tells you what they're actually trying to do, which is like, this is an action movie. This is not really focused on like drama or, social perils. Like, it is a much more just like, what if we just, swing various pieces of furniture at each other?
Yeah, I mean, okay, so here's the thing, right? That's a good point, because it's like I think there is a way, probably, to make a Pride and Prejudice and zombies where if somebody who actually understands Austen's writing and like has spent time with it can find ways to integrate zombies and like talking about zombies into this like Austen-esque, interpretation of the era. And it could, and there's probably interesting ways to shoot it. Do you shoot it like an action flick? Do you shoot it like a horror movie? Do you shoot it like a period piece? Right? 2003 Pride and Prejudice had very 2003 camera work. A lot of it was like handheld and kind of shaky, but like The Modern Emma is another really great Austen adaptation. Is shot a certain way. Do you go accurate with the costumes? Or do you go full Van Helsing, right? Mm-hmm. Do you just go insane and have some sexy actresses like writhing in the background? I feel like this movie couldn't decide which one it wanted to be, and therefore like it worked every other scene.
Mm-hmm. Very hit and miss. I mean, overall, I would give it like a B minus, but like I do think that like it worked enough times that I was fine with the times it didn't work. But yeah, I do feel like there was a bit where it like they just really couldn't decide what they were going for, unfortunately.
Yeah, B minus I think is like exactly where I would land. It's but you know what my biggest regret was the entire time I was watching it? I was like, this is not a movie you watch alone.
Yes, this is a film that you cannot do by yourself. It is hard to do by yourself, certainly.
Yeah.
One thing that got me thinking about adaptations and the liberties we feel about taking with them was at the end of this movie, right? There's one bridge left in England, and they have to blow it up because otherwise the zombies will come spilling out of them and destroy the whole country. And Darcy and Elizabeth ride over it. There's a big explosion. Elizabeth survives, but like for a good 5 minutes, not even 5 minutes, it's like 3 minutes, but they give you 3 minutes in the film to make it seem like Darcy died, and then they bring him back at the end. They're just like, yeah, you were unconscious for so long, we thought you were dead. Which is really, really stupid. But like in the 3 minutes I thought he was actually dead, I was like, I don't know that I like that choice as an adaptation. Like, I really think that the story of Pride and Prejudice does have to revolve around the fact that Bennett and Darcy get together. And like, I'm just wondering, how did you have any sort of emotional reactions like that? And like, when we do talk about, the kinds of adaptations we are seeing, especially of older media, like, what is I don't want to say like lie. It's like morally wrong to make those choices, right? But like, why do we feel like some of those things work and don't work?
Again, it's like a matter of understanding the thing you're trying to do, right? Because it felt like that scene, when I was watching that scene, what it felt like it was trying to do was the thing that the end of Anastasia was trying to do. Do you remember the scene where like Dimitri, there's a big horse, it's a big stone horse, and it comes to life with Rasputin's magic, and then it knocks Dimitri on the head, and Anya crushes the reliquary, and then everything goes to shit, and Dimitri's on the ground, it kind of looks like he's dead. And she's like, she's doing the thing that this movie is doing. She's talking to him, and she's like confessing, her feelings or whatever to what she thinks is Dimitri's dead body. And then he wakes up on the spot, and
yes.
It's this huge relief.
Yes, that's what happens in like all of these movies, right?
Right. So
this is a trope that's very common, but they don't do that in this one.
No, and it's that thing where they're copying the motion, but they're not understanding why it works. So having him wake up on the bridge would have worked. I don't understand. Do you think maybe, here's my question. Do you think there was this part where he woke up, but then it changed with the rewrite, and then they had to tack on that ending scene?
I think it's something like that. Either they did fully believe he died, that's why they didn't use the footage for him waking up, or I think that's probably what happened. I think that they were like, yeah, we should have to kill him at the end, and then they took it back to the editors, and they're like, no, you can't kill Darcy at the end of fucking Pride and Prejudice. What are you doing? And they're like, all right, we'll do a reshoot.
Yeah, it shit felt like a reshoot. But, like, you know, to get back to the point about, like, taking liberties with older material, I think take all the liberties you fucking want, right? Like, it's totally okay to take inspiration from older things, but you have to understand why the thing you're, like, trying to adapt works the way it works, dissect it, and then put it back together the way you want to put it back together. You can't just, like, imitate the beats because they won't land. You have to keep asking yourself, like, okay, well, why does this work? Like, having just this, like, rando white dude adapt this, like, book written by a woman in the 19th century that was, like, so intimate and so about a character archetype that, like, girls would understand, it doesn't work because he never bothered to be in the head of the main character, which was the reason the book works, is to see from the perspective of the... Do you see what I'm getting at? Like, it's just, there's no, like, care taken with the material, and therefore it feels weird. Like, what do you think?
Here's the thing. You're gonna hate me for this comparison, but I was like, you know, the thing is that, like, I think the 97 Romeo and Juliet adaptation by Baz Luhrmann works because, like, they die at the end, right? Like, they understand that the story is fundamentally a tragedy, even though they have fucking guns and shit in it. Like, they kind of know, like, the beats the beats of the story that the audience wants to see, that the story needs in order to actually work, and they do hit them. You know, there are, like, weird flourishes, but on the whole, it is kind of preserving the intent of the story. And I think, like, yeah, if you don't really understand why a piece of media works, you can't just, like, keep throwing weird shit in there and being like, yeah, this is good. This is a fun twist, because, like, ultimately, you know, this book is, you know, it is a fun twist. I'm happy for fucking Quirk Books and the people who wrote it. You know, I think that, you know, Seth Graham Smith is the author. I'm happy for him. I'm glad he had a successful book. But, like, you know, and I think the movie took a lot of liberties with his adaptation of the book, to be fair. But I do think that this movie, like, is just so inconsistent about the things that actually work for Pride and Prejudice, and that's why it ultimately is in that B- range.
Right. It just didn't ask enough questions about the source material, is I think where I land.
Yeah.
But yeah. Speaking of adapting source material.
So, our marketing minute is, you know, the thing we do pretty often, which is, what would you do in this situation? So if we were given, you know, this movie had a budget of, like, what, $28 million, something like that. Yes, $28 million. If we were given $28 million to adapt a classic piece of media, what would we do, and how would we put a weird spin on it?
So Dracula's back in the zeitgeist with Dracula Daily. I think modern Dracula should run a TikTok house.
Layla, what's a TikTok house?
It is a house in which a lot of TikTokers live and make content together. And I just think that, considering that the book Dracula is written in the format of letters, wouldn't it be a fun time if they were TikToks instead? Fucking
found footage TikTok Dracula. Oh, incredible. That might actually own. Yeah, like, just every scene is only 3 minutes long or 1 minute long.
Yeah, or it's, you know, like, Dracula lurking in the back of, you know, the characters doing, like, dances or whatever.
God, I want to watch a whole movie that just has the fucking Kevin MacLeod, you know, shitty little TikTok sounds. God, an entire movie made of memes. That sounds terrible, actually. But...
Yeah, I would no. You can't link those together. You gotta fucking drip feed those to people. What about you?
You ever read or watched, I guess, Heinrich Ibsen's play A Doll's House?
I did read it once upon a time.
Okay. It's not that I read very many plays at all. It's that this play came up in my, like, world literature class in high school, and I read it, and I was like, oh, this kind of rules. And it still is, to this day, my favorite play that I've ever seen. or read rather. But basically, it's the premise of like this kind of like shitty husband who is like controlling about his wife and thinks she's just like a little child. And I would just do that, but characterize it as like one of our tech billionaires, a Zuckerberg, a Bezos, I specifically Elon Musk, and I was thinking of Grimes when I pitched this, and I was like, what if this was about Grimes breaking up with Elon Musk? And yeah, that is the adaptation I would do. I think I would make millions of dollars on that premise.
I like the Grimes thing a lot, especially because there is a point at which you could insert the whole Azalea Banks thing. Do you know what I'm referencing?
No.
Azalea Banks got trapped in Elon Musk's house because she went over to record a song for Grimes, and Grimes forgot. For like 2 days, Azalea Banks was just like stuck in Elon Musk's house.
Okay. Well,
also, I finally heard a Grimes song against my will.
How was it?
Bad.
Okay, well.
It's bad in that way where I'm like, I see why Elon Musk likes this.
Very good. Excellent. Well, shout outs to Grimes. Hope you're doing well, girl.
I hope your kids are doing well.
Yeah, maybe let them have I don't know what I think it's a boy. Let him have a normal name, please.
There's 2 of them now.
There's 2, okay.
Yeah,
well,
let them have normal names, Grimes,
let them have normal names, please. Anyway, well, on that note,
a lot of detours in this episode.
Listen, we are taking all sorts of weird road trips on this very strange episode. Leyla, when we are not trying to drag billionaires, where can we be found on the internet?
I'm at LEYLSCS on Twitter, Tumblr, and Instagram. Just, hanging out, working on slowly getting my life back together. Aaron, what about you?
You can find me on Twitter at AaronSXL, where I tweet about tabletop RPGs, health policy, and writing. I do tabletop reviews at AA Voigt on YouTube. I do another podcast with my friends Michael and Josh at The Bible Boys. It is our spooky season over there as well. I watched 2 films involving the Antichrist this weekend, and they were very different. We watched the 1976 Omen, which unfortunately was a much better film than Pride and Prejudice and Zombies. Still fucking weird, though. I think both of those films could have lost 20 minutes and not really suffered for it. But it was a good time. Our theme song is Obsolete by Keshko from the album Filmmakers Reference Kit Volume 2. You can find more of their music at keshko.bandcamp.com. Leyla, do we have any words of wisdom we want to impart to our listeners before we say goodbye?
Sure. It is a truth universally acknowledged that a zombie in possession of brains must be in want of more brains.
Great. We'll see you all next week.